I received a paperback copy of my novel yesterday, and I noticed some formatting issues, so I took it off the market for a couple days to fix the problems, and it should be back up in a couple of days. I fixed the back cover and so that the text looks more even. I also filled up more of the pages because my margins were way too big and I was wasting paper, which made the book unnecessarily expensive. So I shrank it from 474 pages, which is how big this one is, to about 390 pages. And because I did that, I was able to drop the price of the book from $15.99 to $11.99. And when you see how big this book is, so I'm really happy that I was able to do that. I'm new at using Amazon's Create Space, so I was not aware of all the little problems that came up after I published my first try. And I love it that I was able to reformat the book and make it less expensive. I don't want this book to be so expensive that people can't afford to buy it. It has a .11 font, which is an improvement over the .10 font I had in my first edition from Rose Dog Books. And because of the larger font, it has more pages than the first edition. But I don't want people to have eye strain when they read my book. And if you do have vision problems, you really need to get a Kindle. Because with a Kindle, you can manipulate the font size as you read the book. My Kindle version is still up there. And it does have a different cover than the paperback. This is the paperback, but it's the same book. And the Kindle version right now is selling for $8.99. Silver Skies is for people who care about honoring God with their love life, especially when they're faced with possible adultery or other compromising sexual situations. It's also mostly written from a man's point of view because I wrote it to show the soul of Brent Spiner to the world. I have 2 male leads and 1 female lead. I worship manliness, and all my writings are about masculinity, especially in loving. If you're a wimpy and dishonorable guy, this book will bore you. If you don't give a flip about God or about manliness, especially in your love life, you will find Silver Skies an absolute bore, which explains why Zach Knight finds the book boring, because he doesn't give a flip about Jesus, especially in his love life. Jesus has informed me that Silver Skies' ending is prophetic. It will really happen. When I wrote it, I was just following my heart, even going against some of my religious beliefs, and I had no idea how prophetic this book would be when I wrote it. Brent has informed, that's Brent Spiner, has informed me brain to brain that some of my first edition Silver Skies were switched out with inferior versions of the novel, so that some customers who ordered the book did not get what I wrote from about 2009 to about 2011. The Jesuits switched out the book with an inferior version to make me appear crazy. As a result, the customer who read the book thought it a bunch of trash and returned it to Amazon disgusted. This explains the poor book sales for the first edition. The crappy cover didn't help either. This is a pretty crappy cover. The Jesuits did that to me. But after the customer decided to return the book on its way back to Amazon got switched out with the book that I wrote, so Amazon would get the version I wrote, and they were not aware of what the Jesuits were doing to my book sales. Jesuits do mail switch outs a lot on me. If I mail anything Jesuits don't like, they do switch outs using their agents inside the United States Postal Service. And they're not limited to mail either. They could do the same thing with email and other online activities. So it's possible that some of my Kindle versions of Silver Skies were switched out too, and customers did not get what I wrote. Now, some customers did get what I wrote. The Jesuits didn't want to be too obvious about what they were doing. My men and Amazon are now aware of this problem, and to exercise more control, they've instructed me to only make my books available through Amazon. That way we can have better control over how the book is delivered to customers. Amazon is working with my men in this matter, and Jesus himself told me that Jesuits have not taken over Amazon. because I want to ensure that readers get the book I wrote. And I am only selling my books through Amazon. It's a form of quality control. I'm not sure I can trust any of the other companies out there. Jesuits are such good infiltrators. I apologize for taking my book off the market for a couple days after I announced that it was available. But when I received the paperback version yesterday, I realized that I needed to fix the book and make it better and cheaper. I want my readers to get a high quality book in a professional format. I also wanted to mention that Jesuits have taken a quote that I said, and I can't even remember when I said it, and I don't recall publishing it anywhere, where I made a statement that Jesus is the sexiest man alive. I feel really bad for Jesus over how the Jesuits have interpreted this statement at their website, www.crazygail.com. Yeah, Jesus is the sexiest man alive, but that's my opinion, and that's because he's the most masculine man alive. I find masculinity attractive. But Jesus has cured me of any sexual desires towards him. I can't have sexual desires towards a being or a God who has no sexual desire. He doesn't have any sexual desires for me. And so, this is not an insult. It's because he's God. And God's not interested in having sex with humans. You might say, but he said he would give you his semen. And now you're saying he changed his mind and decided to drop the sex part? There never was a sex part with Jesus. Jesus has not changed his mind about having sex with me. I misunderstood him. Jesus gets misunderstood a lot. And if you read the Gospels, you can find out his disciples had a hard time getting him right too. He would never, ever intended for me to interpret the fact that he's allowing Brent Spiner to have his semen in the millennium when Brent makes love to me in the millennium as to mean that Jesus will be participating in the sexual act. I'm like my ancestor David, a woman after God's own heart, so my guess is he's just letting me experience his semen through Brent Spiner only. He said it's only going to be through Brent Spiner, because his semen is really cool and will greatly enhance my lovemaking with Brent during the millennium. Nothing more and nothing less. I've gotten to know Jesus pretty good over the past 2 years, and believe me, when I disobey him, he makes no exceptions for me, and will only honor me when I correct my disobedience and get right with him. I work very hard for Jesus, and he appreciates it. And I usually have a lot of faith in him too, even when it seems crazy to have that faith. When the Israelites went in to conquer Canaan and they got scared because of all the giants, so they complained and wanted to stone Moses, they ended up wandering for 40 years because they complained against God, saying they wanted to go back to Egypt, even though God ordered them to go over to Canaan, to the promised land. I probably would have been like Joshua and Caleb and encouraged the people to trust God. I would say, hey, don't chicken out on God. He can beat those giants in the promised land. He wouldn't ask you to do something that he can't deliver or promise, And I'm kind of in that way in my life right now. Like I'm kind of in a rough situation with my employment and everything. But I have faith in God, and I know he can do anything. He even stopped time for me a couple weeks ago. So Jesus likes how I respond to him. He has trouble getting this kind of response from most people, and that's probably why I'm getting his semen. My faith isn't perfect, but it's stronger than most, and I'm like King David, my ancestor.